is just something that I downloaded that
Yeah, that'd be great.
I find interesting that
Who goes to?
Galveston hands out to every place.
I hear they're implementing a big parking thing or something.
They're doing all kinds of
Yep.
different things there. They went through this years ago, of a lot of changes, and then it's kind of come back. I spoke to a lot of people in Galveston groups, and I think they kind of have everything situated where they have different types of plans in different communities there. So
Yeah, for the last 2 days on 12th Street, they've had cars and boats and trailers parked all over that place. There's all kinds of stuff.
on 12th, oh, that
We're good whenever you are.
Okay, I guess we're gonna call to order this meeting here for the ad hoc short-term rental working group, Friday, October 15th. And I guess we'll go to citizen comments. Anybody have any comments that they like to make? No, are you sure? Brett? Okay. Okay, so items for consideration. Discuss 3.1, discuss solutions to issues regarding short-term rental occupancy. Anybody have any thoughts on that, Steve? I mean,
there's, and I think we've all been on the internet looking at different areas, and some of the areas you can look at where they really made some differences, like Tybee Island in Georgia.
you might want to speak into that so they can hear you too.
Like Tybee Island and Savannah, Georgia, they have a pretty good program, and Galveston obviously is involved in trying to do different things. And I'll share quickly with some of the things that I've learned and talked to people from those areas when I was at the Vacation Rental Management Association, because it's a hot topic around the country. It's more than what, we're in the infant stage of it here of trying to deal with these regulations compared to where Padre Island, their South Padre is dealing with it at this point. Galveston's on their second round of trying to come up with other solutions. But one thing I found interesting in Galveston, they actually kind of formed, first of all, they have an ownership group that owners can join, and they actually have a board, and they work on different things. And the Good Neighbor brochure that I gave y'all, that's actually a product of that group.
Okay.
And so to me, it's a pretty soft toned brochure that kind of lets the guests know that there is some rules that they need to follow. That was actually something they did. And I don't know how many members they have in that group, but evidently it's a pretty large group. There's also another initiative where I think it's Ryson, which is a large property management company there in Galveston. I don't know if it's their ownership group put it together, but they have it's an association type thing where owners, not only just their owners, but all owners within Galveston that are renting can actually join their group, and they have private security. And so they pay $400 a year, and they get a drive-by a couple of times every night at their properties. And which is, again, we're talking a lot of money trying to protect a lot of properties, and $400 a year, when you break it down to the nightly rate, that is a pretty minimal amount at the end of the day. And that's just one solution that they kind of came up with, obviously with several thousands of vacation rental homes there. To only have 400 join it is kind of probably disheartening in a way. But I think they're using what they use sheriffs a lot, I guess, in Galveston. And so they have sheriff deputies that actually work privately part-time.
Yeah.
Yep. And so they have a lot of authority to handle problems as needed. Tybee Island, they actually did something very similar, but what they did, they raised their STR fees up to around $500 per registration. They took the monies from that fund and added a number. I think they said they have 6 new enforcement people on board that are doing just that. They're actually patrolling and looking for violations and we all know the violations when it regarding trash that falls back on the owner and the property management. The problems that I see that really needs to go to the next level is the noise, the drunkenness, and the things that are out of control. That's where we need help from the city or from somebody with authority. But that's just, again, that's my opinion. But every little nook and cranny in the country. And I think what the message they said, if you're not experiencing these problems with STRs, you're not looking.
Yeah.
They said they are there. And so there's a huge advocacy group within the VRMA, and we actually, it's not to fight the different programs, but it's partly part of the right to rent, which Texas, luckily we're in a state, and there was a guy up there from Round Rock that is involved in this. And they talked about how we have a lot of good laws here to protect our property rights, but also we got to protect our communities and make sure that everybody is a good neighbor.
Yeah, but we all have property rights, all of us.
Everybody,
Yeah,
there's
so-
no doubt. And so I think that's, and as we always say, we're trying to solve a problem that a very small percentage of the people that come here are causing us.
Yeah,
But again, as I said the other day, they cause problems for my good guests. And I would much rather have good guests versus bad guests.
right.
But that's, again, they're all over the internet. You can find different ways that different communities, but Galveston's probably a good place to kind
Yeah,
of,
because it's in Texas.
yeah, I mean, they're going to deal with the same laws for the most part. But I also had several citizens here reach out to me about different things, like Royal Sands area. I had a gentleman contact me about the thought of having private security in Royal Sands. And to me, that falls in that Galveston situation where it would be very simple that those homeowners out there that are in the rental program pool their money, get a golf cart, get somebody to work part-time and run from 8 to 1 in the morning or something with a yellow light going from one community to the next. It's not a lot of driving, but you could solve a lot of problems and look for problems. So he came up with that suggestion, which last year we worked on an initiative for about 6 HOAs that we manage. We just never could put it together with the security people just couldn't get me the people.
Yeah.
But we were going to do drive-bys through like Aransas Harbors, the Commons, Gulf Side, and several of the others that we work with, where we had private security with the yellow light, basically driving through slowly, looking and listening for problems. And I tend to believe that our answer to most of our problems comes down to some type of maybe private security, because I feel the city is not going to spend a ton of effort, or not effort, but there's got to be funding, and it's got to be something that's good for everybody before the city does it. But,
Yeah, and the only other thing is the parking,
Yep.
so parking's still an issue. And now, Richard, you're a self-managing,
Yes, ma'am.
okay, short-term rental.
Would you mind if I introduce myself?
Yeah, go ahead.
Sure. So my name is Adam Richards, and my wife and I built a home down here in 2018 after Hurricane Harvey. I'm a general contractor from up in San Antonio, and we spent 2.5 years down here rebuilding a lot of the island. So we split our time between our home here in Port Aransas and our home up in Bulverde, Texas. When we're in Bulverde, my wife does rent our home out on Airbnb. As far as property managers go, she's a pit bull. Nothing gets by her. Our properties run pretty well. And I'd like to give some suggestions on some ways that other people can run their property similar to the way we do. But it all boils down to, my opinion is, owners who run their own properties and manage their own properties, and property management companies who are delegated by owners to run their property for them, have really got to step up to the plate and take more responsibility for their guests' behavior while their guests are at their property. That's my opinion. I think that, like Steve said, there's a small percentage of people in this town that are not paying attention to their rental. There are some management companies that are maybe managing more properties than they need to. There are some issues that I think we can definitely get a grasp on without limiting private property rights and without disrespecting the neighbors and the local residents that are here day in and day out, that work in our shops and take care of this town. And so the property managers do need to step up and take responsibility. We cannot just show the guests the rules and cross our fingers and hope that they obey them. As managers of the property, it is our responsibility to check up on the guests and ensure that they are following the rules. I like Steve's suggestion of private security, everybody pooling their money together. I also like his suggestion of raising the registration fees and putting that burden on the city. But it really does boil down, like Steve said, if we're going to step up and make sure that guests are following the rules, we also need the city to step up the enforcement for the people who aren't. Because right now, we're all getting lumped in this STR problem, right? And we don't have an STR problem. We have a problem with some STRs in this town that will not get their guests to behave right. And so what can we do to get better guest behavior? Well, I think it does start with the owner and the property manager, but then it also does fall on the city to make sure that everybody's doing what they're supposed to be and punishing those that aren't, because right now nobody's being punished. So it's just a snowball effect. It's getting worse and worse and worse.
So how do you handle calls on your properties if you're not here?
Okay, so me personally, to answer your question directly, if someone calls me, I've got a team of people here in Port Aransas. If I'm out of town, I've got a host who goes and meets my guests when they check in. She gives them her phone number and she's our point of contact whenever they have an issue. If the phone call comes to me, I would call my host and have her deal with the situation. I also have a couple of guys that act as an informal security if I need to deal with anything security wise. I've got a maintenance guy that can go over and handle any maintenance issues. I've got an air conditioning contractor for my AC. I literally have a team of 20 or 30 people in this town that I can call and have someone at my property in 2 minutes.
Have you ever had to deal with security issues?
Well, we haven't had to deal with major drunken brawling parties. We have dealt with occupancy issues where guests show up with more people than they said they were going to have.
How have you handled that?
What we do is we call the guest and we say, hey, you've got 12 people. Your reservation's for 6. You need to find another place for 6 people or you all need to leave.
How did you determine they had 12 instead of 6?
We have cameras on our property. So as soon as the car pulls up, I know exactly how many people get out.
That's a good.
Many owners do have cameras, and as a property manager, it's a mixed bag. Because it can be, oh, I want a 40-pound dog, and they show up with the dog, and you're going, well, and they send you the video, go, look, this dog's bigger than 40 pounds. And I'm like, maybe,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
again, but there's some pretty strict guidelines that you
internal
have to
cameras.
advertise what you can hear, what you can see.
Sure.
And those are more Airbnb and VRBO rules, Verbo rules than anybody else's, but there is some stipulations, but it's not a bad thing for sure, because you do see it. And I'll tell you, we haven't purchased, but there's several different options that it is a Wi-Fi system that goes into the properties. And so for us, it's going to be probably somewhere in the neighborhood of about $40,000 investment to put these in all the units, but you tell it what the occupancy level is and what your threshold for number of devices that you think would be a problem. So
That's smart.
for instance, it's if you say it sleeps 8, And all of a sudden you set it to say, well, if I see more devices than 8 or 10 or whatever, because, somebody has a smartwatch or whatever, they could be putting that on there, but it will alert you saying, especially in a situation where I've seen parties that can explode pretty quick.
And that's not 40,000 for each unit, that's 40,000 total. all
Total
your
for
units.
300 and something units. And it also takes the aggravation out of the logging in, logging out, or for guests trying to get on the Wi-Fi, which here can be a pain, but it also provides us, there's other things it does. It provides marketing to retarget. But the biggest thing I find that it will do is I can actually post the rules in front of everybody in that property that gets on the Wi-Fi, because that's our problem with golf carts. We say, okay, the guy comes in, a lady comes in and says, I'm renting a golf cart. You give them the list of rules and they go, oh yeah, we got that. You give them a copy, and then they go back and the keys get thrown on the table and,
Yeah.
and who knows, drives that golf cart, hadn't got a clue where they can drive it, all the rules. But for the instance of a property, if most people, which they probably do, they log into Wi-Fi, at that point, it has a splash page that talks about that property, tells you some rules. You can even set it where they have to check off certain rules. At least most people will have an opportunity to see it, because that's truly some of our biggest problems, is not getting to that second tier of guests that are in that property. We get to one, the person who booked it, and they just kind of are by themselves. So there's some tools out there that, you can adopt. And again, if it wasn't for the ability to remarket to all these other people, it probably, to me, I'm like, well, it's a good idea and it does solve a couple of the problems. Occupancy is one of them, and rules, spelling out the rules to others is another one.
Yeah.
If I may, I wanted to hit on occupancy specifically, because I really did bring some really good ideas here, guys.
Okay, good.
And I really appreciate y'all giving us the opportunity to sit at the table and come up with some solutions, because we're not happy that you guys are, that the city's not happy. We want to get the problem under control just like everyone. And so just like Steve came with some great ideas, we also prepared some great ideas. And with occupancy, what I would like to discuss is, a property has a maximum occupancy. Should we be renting it at maximum occupancy? So what's the calculation? 2 people per bedroom plus 4, right?
And then if you're over 30.
And that satisfies the fire code, right? So if a house can sleep 24 people, maybe we limit the occupancy for a rental to 60% of that, or 75% of that, or something.
Y'all had said that too.
And the reason why, it does multiple things for us. Number one, if everybody does it, it will reduce the nightly head count in Port Aransas, right? If everybody takes 2 or 3 people out of their head count on their house or their rental, it will alleviate traffic. It will alleviate congestion. It will alleviate density concerns when it's really busy. The other thing that it'll do is it's not going to stop 24-person groups from coming. They're just going to have to rent 2 houses. So that's better for us.
Yeah.
The other thing is, we don't want to limit people. If a family comes down here with 10 people and they go to the beach and they meet some people, we don't want to limit their ability to bring them back to the house for dinner. It's going to happen. So if you rent out your house at max capacity at 24 people, and then you go to the beach and you meet 10 people and you bring them back, then you're way over capacity. And that's what's happening nightly, especially with the parties and everything. So we're maxing the house out from the beginning on the reservation, and then we're allowing them to bring guests over. And that's when you get it starts to go downhill. So my recommendation on occupancy is to limit the occupancy that it's allowed to rent at lower than the maximum occupancy of the building. And I don't know what that calculation looks like, but I think it should have a lot to do with how much parking is available at the house. And basically just some reasonable, logical assessments of the property whenever the city goes out there to issue them their permit.
That would be a voluntary by the owners.
I think that owners could voluntarily do it before the city was forced to put a mandate on it.
I think Audrey had even mentioned.
Yeah,
something
there's been a lot of talk about, and where you run into a lot of problems is this properties that were built prior to, especially parking. Parking probably, because, you know, a 3-bedroom house sleeping 10 with 3 bedrooms and 2 baths, that's pretty tight.
That's what I'm saying.
That's pretty tight, you know,
And
and
as
there's
owners, we don't want to max,
No.
I don't want 24 people.
the wear
in
and
my
tear
house.
at that
I mean,
point.
There's no point.
Yeah.
to it.
And I'll tell you, out of our group, if I brought that up to each of the owners, I think there would be a very mixed bag. Probably, you know, there'd be a lot of people say that makes sense. And then the others that are not thinking in those directions. But I think where it really would come in handy would be places where they were allowed to build and didn't follow the bathroom or the bedroom limit for parking. Because, you know, there was a lot of properties here that were allowed to be built back when, you know, number one, they'd have a garage, and then the owner has ability to shut the garage, and then.
So Adam, if you're not familiar, prior to a new ordinance that we wrote, there was only 2 parking spaces required per house, no
Right.
matter the size of it.
Yes, ma'am.
In 2015, 2016,
Yeah.
we
Something
changed
like
that to 1 parking space is required to be there for each bedroom.
Well,
Yeah.
my opinion on the parking is this: every short-term rental should have a parking plan, and that parking plan should support their occupancy
Yeah.
that they're allowed to rent. And so if you can only fit 3 cars there, you cannot have 30 people at your house.
Yeah,
No, there's
I
no
mean-
doubt. There was,
they're supposed to have the parking.
So if
Yep.
you say, hey, I've got 6 bedrooms, so I can have 16 people at my house max. So I'm gonna rent for 10. Well, then you should show parking to support 10 people. You
Sure.
should have room for 3 cars. If you don't have room for 3 cars, that should further lower your occupancy down to what you can park at your house.
And that would be, how would that affect retroactively, like you was talking about houses that are already.
Well, I would
working,
say
have
when they go to
business.
apply for their short-term rental permit, they supply a parking plan if that's the rule.
So
And-
instead of their occupancy being determined by the number of bedrooms they have, if they turn in a parking plan that shows 3 parking spots, they have this occupancy, no matter what size the house is.
Yeah.
With structures that fall under before these rules.
Yeah, every structure would be held to the same standard.
So
Starting
retroactively,
on this date, anybody that that applied for a short-term rental, instead of telling us how many bedrooms you have, you show us how many parking spaces you have.
Yeah,
We'll see
exactly.
if that matches the house and determine
Okay,
your
so
occupancy from
are they
there.
applying for a permit every year?
Every
And then when that comes up, then you hit them with.
As long as we hold everybody to the same standards.
And
at
we're
the
not
same
saying,
time.
hey, you can no longer rent your property. We're saying, hey, you can no longer rent your property to 24 people. You have to limit it to the
Right.
ability to park everybody that you're renting to at your house. Because your parking problem is no longer your neighbor's parking problem, you know?
right.
So we should have gone by how many parking spaces instead of bedrooms.
I
You
think
know,
it
and
should be a
it's-
Well,
combination.
Yeah.
it could be a combination, because you can say, hey, this house sleeps 24 and we have parking for 40
Yeah.
people. Okay.
I
Yeah.
think where the
Well,
gray area you're gonna run into is, and we do a mixed bag of rentals. I mean, we have probably 150 condos and we have 150 houses. It's a mixed bag.
Yeah.
Where you have your biggest problems, in my opinion, is some of these condo associations, some of these condos, and you go, and I can name them, you go to Meridian, that guy should
Oh,
have been
well,
shot
that's-
for building, I shouldn't say that out loud,
It
but
was built before I was here.
it was before I was here too.
Negotiate says that.
Yeah,
But you know,
but,
there's several of those.
Yes.
here.
but then
Well,
you got
they
all
need to be
this.
Held to the same standard.
Yeah, the problem is you have auxiliary parking, you have extra parking. And so how do you accumulate, how do you accommodate? That's where it gets to be kind of gray and muddy.
Yeah.
On houses, it's not that hard. It probably makes great sense, but on a condo association, I think the Commons has 78 spots. All of them are 3-bedroom, 30 units. You know, you start thinking through the process. Some of them sleep 8, some 9, some 10. They all vary. The group would like to probably pull it back a little bit, is what they're thinking. But they haven't pulled the trigger on it as an HOA. But
So you just to clarify, you're saying one issue is that these condos cannot keep their parking on their property?
yep, I mean,
They're going out onto other people, into the streets?
they're
and
just a
everywhere?
mess there. And, you know, I've mentioned it before.
We don't have
We,
assigned parking.
yeah, they have it. Some of them have assigned and some don't. And then the other problem is where this was just before they changed the ordinance again, because people were circumventing that process by saying, okay, well, I got a garage, so that's one. I got 2 other parking spots. So I got 3. So I cover the 1 parking per
Yeah.
bedroom. Then the owner brings up and says, well, we're going to keep the garage for us.
Which
And
is why
so
we don't count garages as parking.
that's again,
And
so
then we're
that
gonna put a
changed.
picnic table
Yeah.
on one parking spot under the house.
Yeah, so there's a lot of things there that makes, it does make sense that we try to, get the limits more sensible, but most houses I see, they will accommodate it except for in these extreme areas where, over here, Mercer Village, that's a problem. Narrow street, not enough parking inside for all the 3-bedroom
Oh,
properties.
no,
And
12th
so-
Street's a problem right now.
Which one?
12th Street's a
12
problem
oh,
right
yeah,
now.
well-
They've got a trailer and a boat.
Well, because
And a
I
trailer.
don't think 3 parking spaces is enough for 10 people.
No,
Yeah.
well, that's not the world we live in today.
No.
It truly isn't. But one thing I'll point out that, I kind of sidebar with Rick Adams one day, and we were just talking about ways to solve that. And the city evidently owns 66 acres of undeveloped land. So how, in Galveston and a lot of the other places have developed a parking garages or parking places. And, we kind of threw it out there and said, okay, how about Life in Paradise or not buys, but rents a number of those for overflow. So we say, okay, we have our overflow, we pay the city for it, and we're regulated to this many. Or we put a machine in there like the airport, and we tell the people that have too many cars, there's your spot, and they go in, put their credit card in. It's
Leave their car there all weekend, ride
Yep.
around with their
and
friends.
and so especially where they come in and they go, okay, well, I got 3 spots, I got 3 cars, no, I got 4 cars, and I got 2 golf carts.
The
And-
tricky part about that is we allow on-street parking.
Yeah,
So it's not illegal for them to park on the
no,
street.
it's not.
Well, they're gonna start red striping too pretty soon.
I think that's
Fire
gonna
lanes.
be a pretty major discussion at some point in the near
Yeah.
future is
Yeah.
limiting
An
on-street.
idea
parking.
I had on parking is, why doesn't the city contract, on the enforcement side, contract with a tow truck company that, hey, you guys enforce our parking rules, commit 4 trucks to the island at all times, and yank cars out of here as quick as you possibly can.
I think Galveston has something in
Yeah.
place like that where you have to have a sticker saying you're a homestead and you park on the street, and if anybody else does, we're gonna tow you.
If
Some
the
kind
tow
of deal
company
like
We
that.
have here was able to tow cars, they could. I think the parking problem that we have is not necessarily illegal parking that's happening. It's just that so many people are bringing so many cars that it's
To
littering
one
the
rent
streets.
house.
They're parked legally
So-
on the street, so they can't be towed. They're parked legally in the driveways or in the yards, so they can't be towed. So it's not a towing issue. It's a,
Well,
How do we
if
limit how many
you can
cars
still
per
park
issue?
legally in the street and have a house rule at the house you're staying at that says no parking in the street. And that's what I think, we should have a short-term rental parking plan.
we don't
where
have
you
the ability
show-
to enforce.
See, that
your
wouldn't be
rule of no parking
enforceable.
on the street.
Yeah.
It's not
I agree.
enforceable.
That's why I said this has got to be a team effort. We've got to set some rules for amongst ourselves
Yeah.
as property managers
Yep,
that the city can live with, and then we have to enforce those rules ourselves. And so if we say no parking in the street, and I look at my camera and I have a car parked in the street, I will call that guest and tell them to move the car. If they don't move the car, I would like to have some support from the city where I could call someone and say, send a tow truck
We
or
can't,
send
I mean,
a.
you can't legally take a car off of the street that's legally parked.
Right.
the other thing you have too, and I brought this up, and it's a kind of a cool culture thing that we've developed here in Port Aransas over the years of, it's a tourist. And I think I've had this conversation with Christy, Miss Woody's, that they really don't want to tow a tourist, it's a black eye, I guess. And so it goes back to the enforcement piece. And I think that we have a lot of rules. I mean, we have a lot of rules. We have some good rules, but our problem is I always look at it this way. If I go out there and I'm always the bad guy saying, no, you can't do that, you can't do that, you can't do that, you got to do this. And then the next group that's doing it says, oh, it's not a big deal, don't worry about it. Then I become the bad guy, and I want to be on equal footing, and that the city comes in behind me. And just like if I call on a noise problem, I can't tell you how many times, I'd love to hear what the police officers say to them because they
So
don't,
I
they don't
talked
pay
to some
attention.
people before we had this meeting about these specific concerns, and I've gotten firsthand comments that parties going on, call the cops, cops come out and say, well, we can't do anything. This is private property.
Well, they tell them, I mean, I can tell you, my husband's gone to a
Yep.
number of noise complaints and
Yep.
they tell him to turn it down. And
Yep.
they make sure that they turn it down. They'll drive back by through again.
And here they
see.
come. So
Right.
that's where it becomes a ticket. That's where, okay, a
People
written
understand
warning.
that.
Here's your warning. Next time I come by here, it's $300. So y'all might as well go ahead and throw all your money in a pile. I'll be back because I know you're gonna not pay attention. And
Yeah.
and that's
And they
that's
ticket them.
and then once they get ticketed and there's ramifications for their behavior,
Yeah.
you change the behavior, just like your kids.
Just like the towing, like you
Yeah.
don't want to tow
Yeah.
a tourist car, but if the tourist car doesn't get towed, the tourist is gonna keep parking where they shouldn't be parking. So you
Except
So-
that it's
go.
a different group every weekend.
Yep.
So like Brett says, it's a re-education process every weekend.
Yeah.
I've
So-
been to towns where the first thing you hear when you drive in is do not park there. Do not park anywhere you're not supposed to,
Yep.
because they will tow
Right.
your car in 10 minutes. You will go in the store and come back out and it will be gone. That's
So-
what we need in this town. We need people to know as soon as they get in here, we mean business. We want you to have a good time, but you need to follow the rules.
Well, if you started enforcing it, the word would get around and the
Get
culture would
fast.
start changing. But about parking on the street, is that like a state law? You can't tell
It's a
people they
public
can't park
roadway.
on the street?
Say that again?
I say, is it a state law that says you have to let people park in the street?
No. But the city of Port Aransas allows parking. If Adam doesn't like that somebody's parked on the street in front of his house, he doesn't have the ability to just call somebody and say, come tow this car. Car's legally parked.
Right. So
If
it's,
the
city
city,
could
if the
change the
city
rule.
didn't allow parking on the street and it was appropriately signed and marked and painted, then he could call and have that
Okay.
car towed.
well, that's
But
what
right
I,
now, that car would be legally parked.
sure, that's what I'm asking. I mean, does the state of Texas have anything to do with that? So you can't restrict people
There's,
from
there's
parking on
city
the street?
streets. We can restrict parking on our streets
Yeah.
as much or as little as we want.
Would that be a good idea?
So one of the ladies. in
What
our
about
group-
parking permits?
One of the
Street
ladies in our
parking
group,
permit.
she had a car blocking her driveway. She called the cops. The cops came out there and told her there's nothing they can do. She needs to find whoever's car it is and have them move it.
The police here?
Yeah, Port Aransas. So then they said the only reason that they could move that car for her was if it was fire lane stripe. So then they fire lane striped that whole neighborhood. I forget the neighborhood. I think it's
Well, some of them are gonna. it's
Wow.
gonna
I
happen.
forget which neighborhood it is, but they fire lined the whole neighborhood. So now
What
there's no
neighborhood
parking on
that
the
is?
street in there.
There's several.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So to be clear, you can have a car towed that's blocking your driveway. Because that's not
Yeah.
legally parked on the street.
That's right.
Typically, they'll move it
They'll try.
back.
they'll-
If they
I
got a
mean,
spot, they'll move it back to where it's not blocking the driveway. They typically don't haul it to the impound over
Well, the
here.
police won't move it.
No, no, the police won't, but when they
have
call the
enough to
tow
do.
truck, and I guess, I don't know how they handle it, but
And I
So-
don't know that we need to say no parking on the street, but maybe we do a survey of the streets and figure out some streets that it's not feasible to park on the streets and
But
make
then what
more
happens?
no
So
parking.
if you
zones.
rent a house on Sandpoint and you have an extra car, where do you go park that car? You go park that car on Anchor Drive.
Well, that goes back to the parking plan.
Yeah.
You shouldn't have an extra car if you have the number of cars that are assigned to that house.
So,
Right.
so when your guests come, do y'all give them like something to stick in their window at what address they're at or what house they're at or?
condo
I mean,
association.
Yeah, I know some of them do, like if you're out at. Port
We have
Royal.
parking passes at Seabreeze. We have parking passes Island Retreat. We have parking passes at the Commons.
Yeah.
And
Then-
Village Walk does a great job with it.
Yeah,
too.
Village Walk, we have it there, but, and they
Just-
do
it's-
have Miss Woody's record guy, he is watching. And,
The
Because
record guys will watch.
they
man.
will.
oh yeah, because they
will
know
rip
that
cars
that's,
over here fast.
so I was working on an air conditioning unit one night about 1 o'clock in the morning. And he threatened to tow my vehicle because I just turned the flashers on and walked in. And I was like, trying to find a place to park, it's like beachside. Sometimes it's difficult on a busy weekend. It's just, But I do believe that the city needs to take a strong look at some public parking to, I know that, eliminating some of the people renting houses here, my opinion, what it does, it brings more day trippers. I think that the day trippers don't maybe come as often as they want or as many as they want because they go, oh, it's crowded. But if all of a sudden you shrink the amount of people at the STRs level, now you're going to get all the day trippers and you're still going to deal with the traffics and my office being right there, I get to see this line on Saturday night. And at Saturday night from about 3:30, 4 o'clock, as people leave the beach, it's lined up. It's just, bumper to bumper people leaving the island. And so I don't know that we want to try to segment and regulate based just on STR type people. I think we've got to try to figure out a way to maybe slow that down, but I don't, it's a public beach, you can't.
Yeah.
But I can tell you, like in Tybee Island, just go to their website and look at their rules. And there's no drinking on the beach, which is no fun. That's going to be a problem, I think. They can't drive on the beach there. They got all kinds of really, you can't build a fire. You can't have a cookout on the beach. So they really, they kind of make it, but people evidently still show. I don't ever see Port Aransas getting to that, that particular situation. But again, I think, it's not always an STR problem. And I think our chamber can attest, they have some great numbers on the number of people that come on a daily basis on a weekend that we feel it's STR people making the problems, but it can be our day trippers, which, that's a public beach.
But most of them.
They're not parking on the street usually. I mean,
No, they're not.
No.
That
They
goes
usually
back
come to the beach.
Also, when the city gets a new code enforcement officer and we actually start some enforcement, we can collect data. And then we can analyze the data and see exactly what the problems are, where the problems are happening, which managers are running these properties. Right now, we're all kind of trying to fix a problem without having a really good grasp on the actual problem. We have a lot of symptoms here, but like we've said before, there's a smaller group that's causing the problems and we want to identify that group. But in order to do so, we need some historical data points that we can reference and say, look, lots of parking violations in this neighborhood, lots of noise violations in this neighborhood. Oh, all these houses are run by so-and-so. Well, that, right now we don't have the ability to do that.
So we have
We're
that.
working
City
on it,
Council on this next Thursday is going to vote on a software system that's going to be able to track all this.
Perfect.
Yep.
So there is,
Start January.
so they'll be
Yeah.
collecting that kind of data, I mean, all kinds
Right.
of data, right?
Right.
Not just how many.
but one of the
STRs
things that was a great suggestion by the people, again, I talked to a lot of people in Tybee because they were really involved, and they did have they have a moratorium for halt so they're very involved, but they actually, their police department and their enforcement groups went ahead and categorized every offense based on, is this a short-term rental property? Is this an owner, local owner, or a part-time owner? So they categorized, and it came out, they said in their study, of course, I'm talking to short-term rental people, they said it came out that it wasn't near as much of the STRs. There was a lot of people that were weekend, coming here for their families and things like that were causing as much problems as anybody. And so one thing we could do is see if our Mr. Burrows we could categorize what the offenses are. And it's kind of strange that, I've only myself been doing this really involved 3 or 4 years, but I've never been called by the police to say, when the guy shot the hole in the wall, I didn't get a phone call. I was told later. And I don't get calls when it happens, and I should. I want to know that the husband and wife had a knockdown drag out, and because I'm going to be over there going, if you didn't separate them, I want them out.
So how about I can reach out to the chief and see if he can come to our next meeting on the
Yeah,
26th.
that'd be awesome, because I think that's would give us, because we're also kind of grasping because we don't have a ton of data,
No,
and without data and what Nicole was talking about, the data that these others going to grab is they're going to grab kind of mainly one thing is make sure that they're registered with the city because we feel we're over, I'm thinking 1,500, 2,000 shy of what should be
you're
registered.
right.
And one of the good points I saw, and I don't remember if it was Galveston or Savannah but they have a real big initiative that they go out to anybody that has a home to let them know about the rules. Because I guarantee you, Adam's well informed on everything that's going on, but a lot of the people that are probably self-renting, they never even thought about half those rules. That's he's definitely in a different group. And there's a lot of them that do like Adam here, that do a good job. They have people on the ground. But then there's others that just kind of come here and they say, well, I got a lock and I can turn it loose and let it fly.
And I think they live out of state somewhere.
Well, we also have, a national company that rents here. They were here before the storm pushed them out, but they're not here as much as they were, but they really don't have like an island presence.
Yeah.
And I think that's important.
Does anybody have any comments? Anybody?
Well, I
Come-
have a few questions.
Come-
I've been doing this for 30 years.
Come on up.
And I try to be quiet.
No,
I'm
you don't
Charlene
have to be.
Gorey. Hi,
Hi.
and we live on Mustang Boulevard, and we've been renting rooms since 1993. So I think I have a question about how you're going to do the new license. Because I think the owners should apply for it, not the rental companies. I think the owners need skin in the game and they need to know the rules.
So we agree, and this year we instituted where the owners have to sign it, but the property managers are just getting the owners to sign it and then getting it back.
Because
to
I
us.
haven't done
So
mine.
it's just, I mean, it's part of your service to them.
I think
It's
Guinness signed yours.
No, it didn't.
That's
Awesome. But I mean,
Oh,
it's
okay, so
the new.
No. The owners, I think, would sign them and then give that paper back to the property.
And
managers,
that's,
and they-
but I think for me, the owners that do, they don't know the rules. It's all about knowing the rules, I think. And then the whole sign thing is cool. There's two on our street, by the way. And then for the condos, do they not use parking passes?
a certain number of them do. And where you run into problems is you go to Island Retreat for 100 and something units over there. We manage 60 something there. We're considered the preferred company,
Yeah.
but we don't manage them all. And so,
But
You-
I hate to talk about other
Yeah.
towns. New Braunfels, all the condos have their own parking
Yep,
pass.
they do
And
that.
you have to have a parking pass and you have to have a wristband to even be on the property.
And Island Retreat's getting very stiff on that, and they are doing a good job to show that you've got to have a parking pass. And they've created some extra parking for those who,
Right.
and they're trying to be boat friendly, trailer friendly, because they have a little something that's luxury called extra
And
land.
that's their rules.
Yeah.
I mean, their rules may be
Yeah.
more
Yeah.
punitive than ours. I
Yeah.
mean, they may only get to sleep 6 people. I mean, some of the
Yep.
condos are like that. But they also hire, they're not guards, they're guests, they're gate guards, they're guest
Yep.
services. And they have somebody at the gate that checks everybody's
Yep.
pass and they check their lease when they show up. Because if they're not here, they're on the river. You know,
Ah.
so I mean, there's, I think some of our problems have already been fixed in other places. And
You're talking about property that has on-site management.
yeah,
A lot of them don't.
no, but even if they don't, if they're a condo and they're a group, even Meridian, they have an HOA.
Mhm.
And you need to go to the
Mhm.
HOA and be punitive with them. Period. That's, and I don't know how many are really houses and how many aren't. So, but I just wondered about the license. I have a lot more things. And you can also do your parking like New Braunfels does they put a sign up on one side of the road and you can't park there. And you have to have a pass to park on one side of the road during the busy time when people are on the river. And they just want to punish the people that want to come for the day, really. But it works. And even the homeowners have to have a
So what's
pass
the
to
purpose of that?
keep
Open
people.
up the road?
Yeah.
So people
So
can
the
get by?
bus can turn the corner.
It's got all the tubes.
Yeah. So, I mean, There's, but I'd be happy to serve on your board because I sound silly, but we actually bring a lot of experience. We used to have a bed and breakfast in Crested Butte back from the 90s and we rented rooms. So they're probably one of the most punitive countries in the world. So
Colorado, you're really getting a handle on it.
nah, I have a story about that. but
Thank
anyway.
you.
And Waylon has a list too.
Okay.
And Waylon's a self-manager. I use him because we decided we weren't going to fight over, because we used to manage our own too for a long time.
She's not telling you the truth. It's because I'm her neighbor.
No.
And Steve does an excellent job.
Steve does a really good job. So that's it. And I don't know how you get other people to have a good work ethic. So
Yeah,
that it's just,
we're working on it.
you are. And I think the biggest thing is your licensing, because I mean,
Mhm.
people post on Facebook all the time, and I'm not a Facebook troll, but I see stuff. They're like, "Oh, we got a place to rent." I'm like,
I
"You
think
don't have
this,
a sign."
I think this new company is gonna really help
It's gonna
us
be-
out.
Are you,
it's gonna be
using- are you
tremendously.
using lodging rev?
The city council is going to decide on Thursday.
Is it lodging rev or is
There
it?
is one that is lodging revs that's now actually been bought by a company. It's
Yeah.
called GovOS.
Yes.
And there's about 4 different, but that is one of the
New
ones.
Brunswick uses that, and it's really easy to report somebody, and they get a letter and they get a huge fine. If you're not acceptable you have to go before city council and ask for your permit and pay $500. So, I mean, there's money. If you put more skin in the game,
Enforcement
people
and
think about
accountability.
it. Yeah,
That's
because they
right.
have the same problems. So it's good. Y'all, thank y'all. for
Thank
giving
you.
us the work.
Thank you.
Yep. Come on.
Yeah, he wasn't gonna
You
speak.
better speak
If you
now.
don't mind, I know Charlene, so I didn't need hers.
Oh,
Your
yeah.
full name and your
My
address.
name is Waylon Cook. It's spelled Koch, and we're at 503 Sandburr, just on the same street as Dennis and Charlene. So we've had our house for about a year almost, and we built it on a lot there. But I won't take up too much time, but I do think that, well, I was taking notes of kind of what you're all talking about. We've been keeping up with it. My wife and another lady started a STR group on Facebook. It started out with about 5 people and it's up to about 70, and they're all proactive. I think you're on that
Yes,
also
sir.
about
Self-managed.
self-managing it and being proactive. But I was going through the ordinances, and it seems like all the ordinances are there already. It's just the enforcing part of it all. So that was the biggest thing that I can see from the takeaway from this. The software that you're talking about, I think that will be a game changer.
It's gonna be huge.
So
I think it's gonna be
and it
good.
may solve a lot of the issues that we're talking about.
Yeah.
So that's great to hear that y'all are going to do that. That's the only thing that I could really contribute, is that the fact that some of the ordinances are already set. It's just the enforcing of it.
Well, which ones in particular do you think the ordinances, which are you talking about that?
Well, there's the occupancy, there's the parking, and
So there's
and-
the regular
yeah,
parking occupancy.
right.
I think those are the 2 main,
Mhm.
a lot of issues we have.
Yeah.
And there's rules on the books, and I think we should look at those rules, and maybe they need to be tweaked a little bit. Maybe we need to add some additional rules, but we're not enforcing the ones that we have now. So what
Exactly.
is adding
Yep.
or changing
That's
them
exactly
doing?
right.
100%.
And I know we're moving towards enforcing them. We've got a new code enforcement officer, but I'm with Steve. I don't know why we don't have 6 code enforcement officers coming on board, and we can figure out a revenue. If they write 20 tickets a day,
Oh,
they
you
can
don't-
pay for themselves.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but you want to
Well-
move to a compliance, not a
Right,
pay for
right.
yourself by writing as many tickets as you can.
And there is the, one other thing I did see that there is the HOT tax, and I think I saw somewhere on a group that there were 4,500 STRs permits, but only 2,500 of them are paying the hotel occupancy tax.
Here?
Is that
I don't think
correct?
we're even
I don't
that
think that
many.
that's.
I don't think
probably
they're
very accurate.
registered.
I think that we lack
Okay.
in registrations. I think that we're pretty consistent in hotel motel payments. There's a lot of people that make hotel motel payments that aren't registered.
Oh,
So
okay.
sometimes they're out. This software program is gonna bring
It's-
all of that in.
So that was
gonna
one
be
other question that I had,
everything.
because
It does
we
everything.
do it and it's voluntary, but we just do it because what you're supposed to do.
This will
But
do
how do you
it
track
all.
that? Okay.
So not only will this do that all, but it's gonna find people that maybe weren't registered and have not paid hotel motel tax.
Okay.
And give us the ability to go back and collect.
Great. That's the compliance
Yeah.
part. Yeah.
Yep.
So awesome.
Yeah,
So
that
it's-
will, I think this software system is not gonna solve all of our problems, but it's gonna solve our registration problem. It's going to solve our advertising how many you sleep problem.
Mhm.
I think it's going to solve our hotel motel tax if there's anybody that is delinquent. It's not going to solve our parking issues. It's not going to solve our occupancy issues. It's not going to solve our trash and nuisance
Yep.
issues.
True.
Mhm.
We'll keep coming up with data, we need data. So
And that's what this is going to do.
so
But I think
they're gonna
more-
produce a lot of data.
A lot.
So
One of the
I'll let y'all
things-
talk.
Sure.
Steve, I'll get out, but I just,
No worries.
I think this is great. That's why I came from, we live this side of San Antonio and Lavernia. I came really for this meeting, to do some other
Yeah.
stuff at our house, but just come because we want to be part of it. Not everybody can come that, maybe doesn't live, here. And
Yeah.
so this is great to be proactive and we're all about doing that as well.
I think everybody's
So,
appreciative for you to come and make the time to, because it's important. It's important to all of us.
absolutely. So, thanks.
What I was going to say is one thing that I'll think you would find kind of humorous, if you were to do a survey around Port A, just ask them, what does occupancy mean? You know the 2 per bedroom, 4 for common, unless it's a certain size and you get another couple. But how do kids count? And you would ask that question to the city. The city was always, if they're under 12,
Because that used to be the ordinance.
Yeah.
And that was,
It used to
We
be
think
that.
yeah,
so we didn't write that. The city council at the
Yeah.
time changed that.
Back in the day.
Children under 12 don't count. So they don't count. as
which is a
people.
bad rule.
We-
And so we had always said, wait a minute, that doesn't make sense. And so we always said toddlers that slept with their parents, they didn't count, kind of like an airplane type thing. But now it is, if they're breathing, they count. And I don't think you'll find, because that's pretty, almost a secret at this point. And I think you would, if you even went to the bigger property management companies and asked that question, I think you might be shocked. And that definitely plays into your occupancy and it plays into your parking, because a 12-year-old or a 10-year-old, they take up space in the car. And it take, you got that right. All their toys, all their games, all that stuff comes with them. So that's another area that I think with education, we can maybe solve occupancy and parking to a certain degree, because people understand that this is a rule. And if we had something stipulated that said, if you're over occupancy, if we can prove you're over occupancy, but there's some pretty strict government guidelines about yanking everybody out of the house or having somebody walk in and make a count. But you can draw some pretty good conclusions and put some pretty good fear into them. If you did have something that says, if you're over occupancy, that's a $300 fine if we can, prove it. Because, they're going to say, yeah, they're going to say, oh, well, they're here for dinner. Oh, they're just here. We're having a little birthday get together, but they have a different place. I mean, I've heard it all.
Yep.
And so you continue to get that. But I think even if it never was enforced anywhere, but it was written somewhere and they thought it was going to be enforced, I think it could be a very good tactic to slow down things, because our occupancy new rule is a pretty good secret.
So I think that the property managers are probably the best people to get that out.
Yep.
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 And
And
so you know what we do. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I can't tell you that there's a property manager in town that we have not told that that's the rule.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I believe that. I'm not saying the city hasn't done a good job. I'm just saying, I think it's not.
They're not
No.
taking it seriously.
Yeah, maybe so. But again, if there was something to back us up, like Adam said, we need some kind of backup behind us. I mean,
Yeah.
I could truly go in there and find them and say, well, and God, I hope they don't have a Visa MasterCard, because you put down a fee that you charge them for something, it gets kicked back, you lose almost every time.
Do you think when when January 1st comes and you all have to have the signs on the houses, how many people are supposed to be in there? I mean, You think that's gonna help or inform anybody, or do we need to put
Hopefully it will
how many
help
parking
people
spaces
get
they
a
need
hold of the
to? or
property
what?
manager
So-
better.
I mean,
I want to say something about the
Okay.
occupancy on the sign. I don't like that because a lot of times I rent to 5 or 6 people. I
you,
don't want them knowing they can have 10 people there.
you can put whatever you want on that.
Yep, it's
If
up to the
your-
owner.
If
You-
your house only
But
sleeps
why,
5,
well, I mean, because we're a family kid house. We don't have bunk beds.
sure.
You know, I mean, so it kind of depends on the person, but you're almost giving them permission to have 10 people there.
Yeah,
I don't know how I feel about that.
It's kind of it's kind of our way to tattletale when that was the reason it's done, is so the neighbor says, wow, I saw 15 people walk in.
and
And
if
they're only
he,
supposed
if
to have
he
10.
decides he only wants 10 people in his house instead of 20, he could put 10 on that side.
Yeah.
Yep.
He
And
can't
what-
go over our
what we
limit.
But you're
did-
not
You can go
supposed to
in.
be trespassing on my property.
That's why it has to be visible from,
The street, which, I mean, I don't mind the number, I just don't know how I feel about the whole, I mean, because if I rent to 2 people, like, Winter Texans, you're gonna tell them they can bring 8 of their friends?
well, I mean, that's up to you. According to the city, they can.
But I know, it may be more punitive, like, if you have extra people, it's $500 a person, and have them sign that.
And if you have the
Yeah.
parking for them,
Yeah, I got plenty.
Okay.
Unfortunately, I got plenty parking.
so,
So our sign has a max occupancy of 8 people. We only rent to 4 people. And like I said before, we generally don't mind if the 4 people that are renting our house want to bring some friends over for dinner or
Right.
something. And so as long as they keep their guests and themselves under the 8, we're generally fine with it. And they're
So-
not being loud
So
or causing.
occupancy for the city is sleeping overnight, not the number of people that are in a house. So if
Right.
a house can sleep 10 people, 10 people can stay there overnight. But if you wanted to have a party with 30 people, that's not illegal.
Except for our policies all say no partying, no gatherings, no, it says
So
that
what do you do when you get a phone call and you say there's a party at your house? What do you do?
I go. And in fact, over here on Farley Street, the very end house, about 3 years ago, I went in there and there was cars lined up and I knocked on the door. They came out and it was a fireman from Austin that had rented the house. Nice guy, but they were having a party. And I said, bad news, guys, sleeps 8. So y'all choose the 8. I don't care which 8 they are. The rest got to go. And a mouthy girl came out there and she was 20 years old and she was intoxicated and proceeded to tell me that she knew what she was doing. She was a professional property manager and I can't tell her that. And I said, maybe I can't, but the police can. If you don't move these cars off the street in a matter of about 5 minutes, I'll tow them all.
You have the ability to tell somebody your rental is over, you can go.
Yeah. Oh, yes. I mean, you can,
The city doesn't have that ability.
no, and you have to get the police department they'll assist, but the constable has to be there. So
But I mean, the
it's,
city can't go to a property and
No.
say, your guys' rental is over, you have to leave. We
No.
don't have that legal ability.
and that's
You
where he
guys
needs to
do.
call
But
us.
here's what y'all do have the ability to do is if we revoke their permission to be there, they are then trespassing. And the police
And
can then.
The
throw
police
them
will
out.
absolutely be
Yeah.
behind you doing that,
So
but
that-
you guys have to be the ones to
have to
make
do
that
it.
decision.
Agreed. And that's what Steve and I are saying. We're the type of managers that will, and we want to find the managers that aren't
Yep.
doing that. There are managers that don't know how many people are in their house. That's the problem.
Yep.
There are managers that don't know there's a party going
I
on.
agree.
That's the problem.
Yeah.
The managers that do know there's a party going on and are doing their best to deal with it and are calling the cops and are trying to get assistance with it we're not the problem. What we're trying to do is how do we identify who these people are that are causing the issues?
Yep.
Right.
And the only way you're going to really figure that out is categorizing the problems from the city level, from the police level, and noting which property management company was involved, whether they're offending or anything else. I mean,
and we're gonna get to that. And
Right.
so
And I
we'll
think,
get the chief here next
so
time.
Yeah.
also, I was gonna say, if we get the chief to come and make the suggestion that now that they have the signs up there with that 24/7 contact, one of the reasons that we did that was it makes it uniquely easy for the police officer to call that person
Yeah.
at that time.
Right.
Before, why didn't the police call? Well, that takes a lot of effort. You've got to call dispatch. Dispatch has to find out who it belongs to. They have to call the police. The police has to call that. It's too much.
Yep.
For
And you have to remember too, that when we get 50,000 people on the weekend, we still only have maybe 3 officers on duty.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
it's hard to enforce, it's,
You
they
got
have their
10
hands
parties
full.
going
So
on, it's
anything
like,
we
which
can
one
do to
do
make
we
it
go
easier
do?
for them, which is why that phone number is there. It will take
Yeah.
a minute for them to say, we were at your house, there's a party.
and
then
it
you
gets
guys take-
logged.
Yeah.
Now we have data. And,
Right.
and that's really what you need. Then you go through and figure out where the offending places are. Because I can bet you call us, ours is a voicemail system that we call back in seconds because it sends it to 5 people. And whoever is supposed to be the lead person, the other night I was in the shower, lady was locked out. I was in the shower, didn't hear mine beep. My son saw that I didn't pick it up and get rid of the email, so he took care of it. So we don't use an answering service. We don't have to call an answering service that hadn't got a clue what's going on. We use, people that are here on the island that are involved in what goes on, and it works for us. And we want to know, we want to be there.
So I think that if you guys set up a good relationship with the police department, they're gonna be your biggest fans.
Yeah.
If you guys are the ones that come out and help them
Yep.
take care of
Thank you.
problems.
Thank you. I'm
Thank
sorry,
you.
I have to run, but I'll be back Monday.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Very much.
Hey,
So
Steve,
so Adam,
Yes,
why
ma'am.
don't you use Steve?
the last,
I
Just
don't have
asking.
anything. against-
Sounds like he's got a big group.
Right.
We only have one property and we find
got
that
you.
it's easy enough for us to manage it.
I get you.
And, if we had 10 or 15 properties down here, it would be more than my wife would be able to handle.
I
We
got
would
you.
be looking for something like that. That's why we don't use a property
Okay.
management company.
I was just checking. So we've gone across occupancy, we've done the parking, and then we have short-term rental nuisances, trash, noise, et cetera, and we kind of touched on that. And then discuss enforcement, accountability, responsibility regarding short-term rental issues. So I think we've kind of touched everything.
Yeah.
We put it on there because we have to do an official
Yeah,
agenda.
so
we left a few things out.
On that trash, I know a lot of people don't really know that you can turn on and off trash, in a season where
yeah, you can.
so you can, I think that information needs to get out that says, hey, because it is expensive when you're sitting there in January and November and these months where there's nobody hardly there and you're paying for 2-3 bins. It's kind of, I can see it's a problem for the owner to pay that extra money. But what we need is a nice, easy process, maybe an online process, so we can go in instead of calling Cindy or whoever we called always and say, hey, let's get this one off after Labor Day. Let's get one bin picked up or not used anymore.
Sure.
And so I don't think everybody realizes that that's an option, because
Mhm.
I think more people would go, oh, definitely give me 2, 3, whatever I need during the season. Because it's really a number that's a bins that it's what causes us the biggest heartburn. I'll promise you. I go out there and it's a 4-bedroom and I see one bin. And I'm like, I call the office, say, get a hold of the owner and let's get another bin.
Yeah, and you can turn it off and on. And
Yep.
I think Republic this year was so much trash. I don't know that they couldn't even
truck
finish
issue.
their round,
Yeah.
and they'd have to go dump,
They,
and they couldn't make it back.
they had
because
very
of truck.
difficult they had truck issues.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
And we also had traffic issues. And so
Yes.
they, on Saturdays, can't make it back.
Wait
Can you
till next
hire
year.
another
shut that
contractor
first
to
down.
help out?
That's beyond my.
Is that too many
And
rules and regulations?
I think they had some valid points. I was here, and he told us, and the group stood up and I mean, they used them all. COVID, lack of parts and lack of this, lack of that. And it's,
Employees, so-
can't get up and down the street, I'm sure some of that's part of it, but I also think a lot of it was just the fact that they just weren't prepared, and not that we changed that much. We didn't grow that many STRs. I mean, we still don't have Sandcastle and several of these other big complexes up and running. And I know there's a lot more individual homes, but I tend to believe that it's not all that. I think it's, everybody's got to be responsible for their business and understand that they need to be prepared for
Yeah.
handling our business.
Yeah.
Well, I think the congestion on the highway is a real thing.
Yeah. But
And
again,
that's when
certain
it's
times,
the need is the most.
wait till we shut down
Yes.
the bridge.
Yeah, that'll be good.
Is there, does anybody know if there is any ordinances requiring people? I know there's a number of can ordinances. Is there
There's
any
not. No,
ordinance
there's
Not a
not.
number of
people to-
can-
We've
Okay.
tried to talk.
We
about
need
for a
that.
long time. Well, we tried to,
What do you think? What, we need what?
So I think it's 3-bedroom is 2. And I think you can get away with 2 cans for a 4-bedroom, but when you step up to 5, you need 3. And you just scale it based on number of bedrooms and max occupancy. And maybe you don't do it by bedrooms, maybe you do it by the max occupancy. But our biggest problem is a 3-bedroom with 1 bin, or
they can't, no, they can't do that.
it just won't work.
Uh-uh.
I mean, it's a pain, and we become trash people. I mean, we go around and we draw straws. Whoever loses gets to go put the rubber gloves on and be a trash guy for the day.
Do you have anybody that fights against when you tell them that they need another bin?
Nope. Nope. They really,
And so the issues with the trash would be overflowing containers, and those containers are not making it to the street, so they stay up by the house for a
Yeah.
whole week. Is that the problem?
yep. And the real problem is that turn days. And so when you have back-to-backs all the time, like we do mainly in July, and somebody's leaving and it's the day after trash day, and that thing is full, the next guest comes in, it's already full, that's a problem. But also if they have it hanging out of there, it's a problem. And then I get it, it's sad that we can't recycle in Port A. I mean, we had a recycle bin over here, wasn't it, across the street? That was a public recycle bin that was there, and they had to take it away because everybody's put trash in it. Same thing happens with the bins. I mean, I got a suggestion there, but the recycle bins we have, and I know we're probably controlled by Republic on what we get, but to have a recycle bin look really close to exactly like a regular trash bin is a problem. The top is a different color. It
Yeah.
does say recycle, but I can't tell you how many times we go pick it up and
I
go.
think you can have a bright orange one and people are still gonna throw trash.
You're right, but I
That's
still,
exactly right.
I just think that we need to have a way to maybe tell them apart, because, if you're local here and you have one, you know which one, because you do it day in, day out. But you come from, New Braunfels, or you come from San Antonio, they have a different system, and they're used to their system, but
Just get some stickers and put recycle on the
Well,
top.
it's
says
on
it.
there.
It says
And so
recycle,
It
if they
says
use
it.
it for trash, then fine them.
but they have to catch them and they're not going and looking at every trash
Yeah.
can.
And then they go, somebody drove by and put all
The
that
city-
in there.
The city of Corpus Christi is
That's exactly right.
is
too.
installing, is starting fines for local residents that are misusing their
Yeah.
recycle bin.
It's a
They do-
pain.
They do it in San Antonio. They have,
They're
they
starting,
have
I
two
mean, they
guys
just
in a
voted
truck
on it.
that
They're
come by
starting
and
it.
look in there.
And that's what they're doing.
Well, I tell you, we took ours away.
We suggest you do
We
that
just
too.
don't have them that same sort of-
Yeah.
I don't think you see many. I mean, we'll get a new owner from Austin that's trying to do the right thing, which, is really, that's good, but it only takes a couple of times and we're out there dumping all of it into
would
the
take
other
all
one.
away.
What's even worse than that is the people that don't fix it. And so that stuff is just getting dumped
Oh,
into
it-
the recycling bin, and then everybody's
Smell.
recycling is for nothing.
Yeah.
Because then that just goes. in the landfill.
Exactly.
But that really should come back to fall on the managers, 100%, and I know Rick and I disagree on some of that enforcement stuff, but I really believe that's on us. I mean, if we do everything we're supposed to do, that's on us.
And do you have somebody who puts the trash cans up, once back to the house once they're emptied?
We have, I have
You
several,
do.
yeah, I have several different people that go around and they know, and then our head of housekeeping and the housekeeping inspectors that drive the little vans around, they're supposed to make sure they see one out there. I know on 11th Street, I make sure that I don't know if Carla lives down that way. No, she lives over here, but before she
She goes
catches,
people, she drives down 11th Street.
yeah, so she catches us all.
If you're on one of those main roads, you're not getting.
So I paid somebody on several of the houses right there on 11th. I said, make sure that they get put up as soon as they come by. But again, it's just
Yeah.
enforcing the rules we have. I think Waylon made a great comment there that we really, as a group, if we take a look at each and every one of them, I think we can solve it without making any huge changes.
Yeah, and if everybody like we're trying to do right now, work together and get, all all y'all. And so.
You have to get everybody.
Hey, I would,
Yes, we have to get everybody.
I wanted you to take a look at, this is actually Savannah, Georgia. They have a website and it's savga.maps.arcgis.com. It is a mapping program that shows every STR, registered STR in the city.
It's gonna be part of it.
Okay,
Part of our-
We'll
so
have
you
it-
click on it, you click on it, it tells you when it was registered, when it expires. It tells you the phone number, the contact, how many bedrooms it
You
has.
should be able to do that, right? They should.
It had, and so, it kind of makes some of our signs not quite as important. I know that was the thing. We didn't want people to have to run up in the yard and get a picture of the sign or whatever, but this actually, it is incredible how much information you can get. If somebody wants to report a problem, then they have a reporting on their website. I
That's
think,
part of it. Not
Yep.
only are they gonna have that online, but we're gonna have a dedicated 24-hour, 7-day-a-week hotline
yep,
that you call to deal with short-term rental issues.
it's gonna be
you-
311.
You will be
Nope.
calling them. And so this next Thursday, the council meeting,
Yes, ma'am.
are they gonna be here?
Um,
Any of them?
possibly
How many
Okay.
bids did you get?
4.
Oh, wow. Okay.
It'd be good if they had that map for unregistered STR.
Well,
Yeah.
then they wouldn't be unregistered.
We don't even know how many houses we have here.
License or not.
Yeah.
I mean, 'cause we know of a few.
Oh,
Do
yeah.
you like rat on your neighbors without knowing?
It's anonymous.
These would be who you're dealing with. From the beginning to the end.
Steve,
And
you,
that 24/7 contact, they're the ones that are gonna reach out to you
Yeah.
and deal with it. And if they can't take care of it with you, then they reach out to code enforcement, then they reach out to the police.
the last meeting we had, you made it clear that really the best thing to do, it's not really a great thing for you to go out at midnight where they're drinking and stuff and try to do something, even if you're a macho man and you're carrying, you still can create an incident.
Yeah, and I had that
And so how does
conversation.
that tie in with the
Yep.
city police?
So I had that conversation with Rick a little bit, and I think I was pretty blunt when I said, the worst thing that could happen is I decide to go out there and act like a policeman. I said, that's the wrong thing to do, because somebody, again, I think I told the story how I was threatened to be beat up. I just called 911. And his friends ushered him out of the way after he realized I really was calling 911 because I felt threatened. It was in my face. And, he asked me what I was going to do about it. And I'm like, look, I'm just trying to help you out here. And that's the unruly guys. But the problem there is what happens if I get beat up? What happens if I get shot trying to do that? Because we have some serious bad apples that show up here. And that's when I make decisions now. When I go out there, a lot of times I peer around the corner. Last year at the Commons, I went over there and I looked at the group and I go, yeah, this is not going to go
And then
well.
what happens when you do call the police?
So I waited, they came out there and they walked over and talked to them. And I was in the parking lot and I left. And when maybe 30 minutes later, I get the same call, they're back at it again. So they didn't care. And the same thing happened at the Commons about 2 years ago. Group of women, 40 and 50-year-old women were partying, drinking, having a great time, playing their music really loud. And I went over and was really nice, trying to play, hey, we just got to be good neighbors, the same thing. She basically told me to go pound sand, and it wasn't a nice way to tell me. And so I said, okay, well, I'll just call the police. And I called the police. 2 officers showed up. They went over and talked to her. And I waited in the parking lot and said, so how'd that go? She basically told us where to put it. And so you're like, and that's when I realized
So
that,
in that situation, why wouldn't you end that rental?
Yeah.
yeah, and it probably should have been one of those situations, but I think we could have saved it if there was some kind of if that officer says, great, I'm just going to issue you an ordinance, a fine for a noise ordinance, and probably a disorderly conduct would have been very applicable to this particular situation, which, you know, it was one of the 15 that was causing the problem, you
Yeah.
know, and there were 2 different condos they were
So,
in.
I mean, it's definitely a conversation we should have with the chief.
Sure. I mean, that,
That's kind of what I was after. I mean, I'm the type of person, if that situation would happen, I would tell the police officer, look, I'm terminating the rental.
Yep.
Let's get these people out of here.
Because those aren't the kind of people that
No, we don't want 'em.
And
continually
that's
come
what
back to
we're
Port
looking
Aransas.
for
So if
at-
they say, we're never gonna come back again, we say, okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
and
That's
the
what
sad
we're
thing is
looking
it's
for.
usually one,
As
it's one
property
out of the group,
managers.
you know.
That's what
and-
we're looking for, is that support.
Yep.
Is that, hey, we can exhaust all of our protocols. We can tell them to move the car. We can go over and knock on the door and yell at them. But we can't physically move the car, and we need some help when it gets to the point where it exceeds our authority. We have to have
Yeah.
some support from the city.
There is some huge liabilities too, and you got to think about these.
Yeah.
So let's say I
Get in big
did
trouble.
escort those women and got the constable over there. We took them out. They were intoxicated. I forced them into the
Oh,
street.
Right.
They have an accident going down the road, kills
Right.
somebody, and it all comes right back.
You're not a cop.
Steve kicked them out of the room, and now
Yep.
Steve's.
And so I have to look at those from every aspect. I mean, it sounds easy, but it's not. I mean, I had some kids over at another place and they were causing problems. I went over, addressed it. And I said, look, I'm going to throw y'all out of here. And they were really scared. No, we'll do whatever. And they did what I asked them. I said, I'll be back tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock. This place better be spotless. And we'll talk about it. There was no talk. I wasn't going to talk about it. I was going to let them sober up so I
Right.
could throw them out.
Yeah.
And because of that fear of putting some drunk person on the street.
And I
And,
get that.
and most of the people you're dealing with noise after hours, alcohol or something else is involved.
I think Dave was talking about, our city manager, about having different levels of how we're gonna handle the situations, like, okay, the noise, you know, certain time of night, they would just call the police instead of you guys trying to go out. I think he had talked about that. So maybe when we get the chief in here
Yeah,
and
be some-
Dave and everybody,
Good
hit
conversation for
those, yeah.
sure.
yeah.
I talked to Mark Clayton once. He's in New Jersey, resort town. He was telling me what they did up there. Pretty outstanding measures. There were people from, you know, that part of the United States who are doing big rentals there, not necessarily STRs, but like a corporation would have a weekend and stuff. And it was creating a problem. And what they did was they would go up and they would just arrest the whole house and put them in jail. And they had to stay in jail until the owner of the house showed up, whether he lived in Pittsburgh or wherever.
Dang.
Those people stayed in jail. That's Mark Creighton. He wasn't lying about it.
No.
So
I'm not sure you've seen the size of our.
I was gonna say,
right
our
at the
jail's not
moment.
big enough right now.
We could always go back to the pen
Yeah.
that we had it
The
where we
computer
put the
center.
benches.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, well, they got Sandcastle right now.
Yeah.
It's a big enclosure.
Well, Sandcastle's fixing to open up.
Yep.
They're letting them move in. I think it'll be a great thing. I can't wait for them.
Any talk ever in the town, and we talk about the transit problems and things like that. I know that our beach passes are tied to North Padre and to Corpus. And has there been talk about, and I don't know even who can regulate it, but $15, wow, it's cheap. And I'm wondering if that shouldn't be 3 times that or something for a yearly. I mean, look at our fishing license, how they've gone up, and really that park, I don't even know what that beach pass has been, but
We're
not that
actually having conversations
Yeah.
about that right now.
no, I think it's
So-
something that's worthwhile, because if we could eliminate a few with a few different things, it turns into a
I
big
don't
thing.
know if we can.
So the discussion that is gonna happen on Thursday is not a price.
No, yeah, it's just
Yeah.
rewriting like a contract or something.
Like adding a city fee on top of the counties, because it's a county beach pass, right?
Yeah. Well, I don't even know.
Okay.
Is it county?
So you'd be adding like a city fee on top of the beach pass to go towards enforcement of STR rules, or
Are they talking about eliminating the county? Or,
No.
No,
or just taking all the
Reach
marbles?
is right now, they're sold everywhere in the county, all that money goes in and people get a certain percentage. I
Yeah.
think this discussion is just gonna be about how that money is allocated. I don't think it's a discussion about, going to a different pass or the price of the passable.
That's a whole nother conversation. It's just looking at it, really looking at it right now. So.
So that'll be at the next council meeting.
Yep. So, okay, so let's just, we went through occupancy and parking, and I guess we're all meeting on the 26th.
So the full group is gonna meet again on the 26th.
So I did like a couple of those parking deals. I mean, I think Audrey mentioned about lowering, the occupancy, but that's, I mean, there's a max, and if y'all,
Well,
well,
here's
power
the
to you
thing,
if you want to lower it,
Steve, we're not charging by the head, we're charging by the night.
Exactly.
And we don't have to adjust our rates any. All we have to do is say you can't bring 24 people, you can
Right.
only bring 18 now.
And
that takes six
money.
people off the beach. It takes 6 people out of the restaurants.
Yep.
It takes 6 people off the
And
streets.
again, that actually, it doesn't hurt anybody in the season. Where it hurts is outside of the season when we really don't even, it doesn't matter as much, but because what's going to happen is you're going to get people regardless from Memorial Day to Labor Day. That's just going to happen. But you get one group, and that has 300, and they decide they don't want to try to push their numbers down. And then you got other people, all of a sudden that property, because we've used to always talk about price per head kind of thing, as a sales tactic to say, look, it's only $50 per head per night, or
you
something.
get 3 families in
Yeah,
there.
yeah, so that was always kind of why you should use a vacation rental over a hotel. So I could see that would be certain people, certain groups. I don't even know who would, who wouldn't, but they would also take a look at it and say, it's putting me at a disadvantage.
Could you make it seasonal?
Seasonal stuff on all these OTAs, on these online travel agencies is a nightmare to try to put, like I do things like, a free golf cart. Well, I can't, it's very hard because we use probably in excess of 10, 15 OTAs to put properties everywhere. And all these OTAs are online travel agents, the Verbos, the Airbnbs, the Flip Keys, all of them are all different, and they populate things at different times. And it gets kind of confusing to change from a 2-bedroom to a 3-bedroom, because we have owners that says, I haven't got the 3rd bedroom ready, so let's rent it as a 2-bedroom now. And that's just almost impossible. And
When you have 300 properties, but people that
yeah.
have.
Oh
20
yeah, 1 or
properties
2,
20
it's
properties,
easy.
it's
Yeah,
easy.
yeah. And again, you would actually, and we do converse with a huge number. I have a lot of people that converse with the guests. I mean, we talk to them a lot, and we're looking at systems. As we grow, I got to add people. I mean, that's all you can do if you want to grow, or you decide you're done, you don't want to grow. But
So I just,
Steve,
I'm sorry, go ahead. Brian.
I'm sorry. Again, would this be voluntary, or are we talking about like ordinances and stuff?
I think we're just talking right now.
yeah,
Yeah.
I don't think you could put an ordinance on it, because you really have to change everything. Okay,
Yeah.
so our max occupancy is this. Let's throw it to 60.
Well, you
And it-
could, but
yeah.
you could take. and
Sure.
say
Change the formula.
Yep.
Between May and
Yeah.
Labor Day, we go to a 60% of your allowed
Yeah.
occupancy. And with
Or
this new software,
75%.
it might be difficult for you to change all of that online, but with our new
Yeah.
software program, we could do that.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think this new software
good
program is
thing.
going to be.
It's a great idea. It's an elegant idea.
I think you'll
So-
have some owner pushback. I mean,
Yeah.
you're gonna change the little stuff on 11th Street, tell them they can't rent to 6.
No matter
I
what you
mean, who
do.
are you gonna? punish?
I'm not saying anything.
I'm just like, I think,
I think it's great for discussion.
This was voluntary.
Maybe if you're less than 10 occupancy, you're okay. But the ones that sleep 24 during the summer,
how many really sleep 24?
A
You would be
lot, a lot.
Really?
our most is 14 to 18.
Yeah, okay, see that.
And
Um,
see,
we've got
most
a
of
lot
mine,
more littles.
I
They
have,
have
most of
parking
mine is
spaces.
probably 6 to 12.
Yeah.
That's just probably what I don't have. I think I have maybe a 16. I just don't have any huge properties. That's why it's really even more difficult, because I deal with kind of the lot of condos. And those sometimes can be you get a lot of more challenges. You go manage over here at Aransas Harbor, you got a person that lives locally, their complaining about noise is totally different than the people that are playing loud music. It's the 2-year-old that's walking across the floor. And I don't even have an answer for it most of the time. And because how do I go tell them, your 2-year-old's making too much noise?
I don't know.
You
Again,
don't. And so, but I get that call at 12 o'clock at night.
Again, you're a self-managing STR owner.
Yes, sir.
Are you a self-managing STR owner, or are you managing for other owners?
I manage for the owners.
He has like 330 of them.
Right, so what you're saying is a good idea if a lot of people joined in, or the voluntarily
If we did it
reducing the
voluntarily,
occupancy.
yeah.
And so I'm wondering how many people are in a position to actually do that, like not him.
No, it'd be very difficult for me to,
You have to get everybody.
to get,
People don't do things
Something to say,
voluntarily.
Brett?
yeah.
Come on. Come up here. You gotta come up here.
Hey, Shelley.
Come on up.
So I'm Brett with the Tourism Bureau Chamber of Commerce, and I think one of the unintended consequences of doing what you're talking about, which I'm not for or against either one, well, kind of have an opinion, but the unintended is your ADRs are going to go down based on occupancy and number of people. And our ADRs, we're in a sweet spot in Port Aransas right now. I mean, you compare us to Galveston, you
For
compare us to
everybody that
South
doesn't know what
Padre.
ADR is.
Oh, average daily rates.
Okay.
Sorry. So the cost of the daily rate of your rental is here, it's quite high in Port Aransas. So it's based on that occupancy number as to why we can pull those numbers. Not saying we need to be that high, but if I'm an owner, I might be concerned if you go from 8 to 4 or 8 to 6, because I'm not going to be able to sell it for the same dollar amount, because people have choices on where they're going to stay and where they're going to vacation, and whether to choose Port Aransas, Galveston, or Hawaii. It all comes down to that price point at some point. So that's all.
It's a good point.
Thank you.
I agree somewhat, but I think that if everybody was forced to do it, maybe if it was a rule change to the occupancy calculation, so that, hey, your occupancy calculation is 2 per bedroom plus 4 times 0.75.
Yeah.
You gotta
So-
tweak the
so-
ordinance.
So what we're looking at is, my house is a 2-bedroom house, which by the current rules, I can sleep 8 people. I would never put 8 people in a little 2-bedroom house. I think that's ridiculous. And if I was limited to 75% of that, which would be 6 people, I would be just fine with that.
Yeah.
And that's the smallest property pretty much that we're talking. Maybe there's some 1-bedrooms out
Yeah.
there. But
We have a lot of 1-bedrooms.
The 1-bedroom, so a 1-bedroom would be 6 and 75% of that would be 4. So you limit your 1-bedroom houses to 4, your 2-bedroom houses to 6, and so on and so forth. All it's doing is reducing the number of people by a small percentage, but that's going to alleviate a lot of problem with congestion and traffic and beach crowds and everything.
Let me ask you, and not picking on you at all, but I own a 2-bedroom condo, and I like to have my number lower too,
Yeah.
because it's my property.
Yeah.
It's less- it's less wear and tear,
Yeah, and so it's the wear and tear bothers me. And, but I have somewhat the same feeling, because I take full responsibility for things that happen in our houses. And that's how we've grown a lot of owners, is that we do stand up and take responsibility and pay for it out of our pocket. But I do have a different opinion, because I have a personal vested interest in that property. So I have a little different, because I wish I could just keep it to 4. I really don't want 6 in there. I'd rather, or better yet, I'd like to have the perfect couple with 2 kids. That would be my preference, but it just doesn't ever work that way.
So let me ask you this, Steve, because one thing that we do that keeps a lot of the problems down is we don't just let anybody book the house.
Right.
We book selectively. We
Yep.
interview our customers. We vet them on social media. We have Safely that runs a background
Yep.
check on them. And we tell a lot of people, no,
Yeah.
you cannot rent.
Have you ever been threatened to be sued over? Because we've looked at
No,
say,
because on Airbnb, it sends you a thing. Do you want to accept or decline this
Yeah,
reservation? We
but-
say accept most of the time, but
Yeah.
if there's an issue, whether it's college kids, whether it's a bachelorette party, whatever the case may be,
Yep.
we'll decline that reservation.
What
and they'll
about a
go book
background
someone
problem? What about a background problem? Because that's what, safely, there's Guest Ranger, there's all these guys that do these, look to see who you're renting to and go, yeah, this guy's not a great apple here. He's done some pretty bad things. Now where, I might see somebody and I shouldn't be prejudiced towards, facial tattoos or something, but I'm at that age where it doesn't seem acceptable to me, but I couldn't go, oh, dang, he has a teardrop. Let's not rent to him. So there's some huge legal issues that could come up in some of the, and I've talked to these companies that created the software, and I generate a lot of software myself, and I understand what they're after. They're trying to make a buck, but where does that leave you legally if you say, and they ask you, well, they didn't meet the minimum age? That's fine because you have that rule. But if you say, well, his background showed that he had a bankruptcy or he had a criminal past, I don't think in the way that our world works today, I think you would be in a liable situation by refusing based on some of those things. And I know apartment complexes, I don't know how they get away with it, but they'll do a background check, they check your credit, they do all that stuff, but it just seems like we're held to a different regard, like a hotel.
Property rights state, it shouldn't really all that big a deal.
I don't think that, I think that as an owner of the property, you have a decision on who your guests should be. And if
But as a
the,
business, you can't discriminate. And
I'm
that's where
not
we
suggesting you
kind of cross
discriminate.
the line.
I'm not suggesting that you discriminate against somebody based
Yeah.
on their color or
Oh,
their
yeah.
religion. What I'm suggesting is you interview the customers and selectively
See
book
if they
based
fit
on
your
the type
property.
of person that you want in your property.
Just like having them in your
Maybe he's
home.
got a teardrop on his face, but he doesn't have anything in his criminal history.
That is true. I mean,
Yeah.
some of the nicest people, we do this, we stereotype all the time and then we're proved wrong.
Yeah.
But it's a slippery slope. And I've looked at these different, background checks, and we look at IDs to make sure it matches who booked, credit card matches all up. We've been burned one time in the last 3 years by
But
a
you do that
guy.
all online.
Yeah, all online.
So he can kind of pick and choose, but you can't because you
Yeah.
have
Well, and
330.
Yeah,
I
I was
mean,
gonna say he's got one. That's
Yeah.
easier to deal and be selective with.
yeah.
People, in today's world, is the social media, people aren't sometimes who they say they are on social media. So, I mean, just,
Yeah, like I said, we'll call we'll call the person and say, hey, what you doing? What you coming down here for? Oh, bachelorette party? How many people? 10? Oh,
Yeah.
okay, well, that sounds great. And we'll interview them.
Yeah.
If it sounds like a party that's gonna happen at 10 o'clock
No.
at night, we tell them no. And if it sounds like a birthday for a 10-year-old, we tell them, yeah, come on
Yeah.
down, have a good time. So we have the ability to do that. I can understand how you may or may not feel that you have that ability, but that's something to think
Sure.
about, is that when we just take an anonymous credit card number and give out a door code and we don't know who's coming is
Yeah.
possibly part of.
I would tell you
So it
probably
is.
95% of the rentals that happen in Port Aransas happen probably maybe longer, more than that happen just as you just described.
Yep.
Yeah.
Let's talk about,
Yeah,
background
sorry.
check. Well, how about a common thing, among all the owners where
A
this guy
database.
don't rent to this guy?
There's been talk about that.
So Safely has a database
Yeah.
that they check everyone against. And the benefit of Safely's databases is not just Port Aransas. These people are traveling all over the country. And once they're in that database for breaking a coffee table one time, they're in that database forever. That's one of the benefits for using Safely. It's $8 a night that gets transferred to the customer. So we don't pay the $8, the customer does. It runs a background check on them. It checks them against their no rent list. It also provides another layer of $1 million of insurance and various benefits. They pay claims a lot quicker than Airbnb or other companies do. The other thing that we have found at our property is we don't reduce our rates to meet the off season is here.
Yeah.
Last off season, we were dropping our rates to $90 a night. Things are getting broken.
Yeah.
People are coming down here, unruly people that are not used to that, being in nice homes like that. So trying to meet occupancy is one thing, but keeping your rates higher, you're gonna get a different kind of quality of people coming down here on the island.
I think you're right to a certain degree, but the last 2 years, you can't outprice stimulus money. And I'm just telling you, we all in this business have been around here a long time. We'll talk, I'll talk to, Miss Woody's, or I'll talk to Scott Tanzer, and everybody said the same thing. Wow, where is our normal group? And I think everybody that lives here every day, we all felt the same thing. And I think that's, hopefully we've got a lot of that behind us and we're going to get back to more of our normal. But I've always told a lot of owners, you can't really outprice. What you wind up getting is that double occupancy in there. When you do, okay, well, this has cost us a lot of money, so I'm going to bring more people. But
or not even the quality of people, but if you say you have an 8-bedroom house and you're doing it at $200 a night, that's when you get college kids down here that don't have any money. They all pull it together and they're like, ooh, we're gonna have a rager, So keeping the rates higher just eliminates some of the problem traffic that we
no, it
get
definitely
down here.
does. But then again, it's a little different in our situation, and you look at the Silver Sands, the Port Escapes, that all of us have a lot of properties and a lot of owners. We represent, with just 4 or 5, Sandkey and a few others, we represent probably about 1,200 to 1,300 of the rentals in Port A, and all those owners are just like you. Really, they all have different wants and needs. And so as a company, it's hard. It really is. It's almost impossible to meet
Please
all the
everybody.
wants and needs of every single owner. And it's a balancing job to do that. And that's what we do. We tell them, look, I interview the owners and I say, are you looking to, maximize your revenue, or no, we want to use it for our own use and rent it to help pay. Okay, I understand. So we will not be very aggressive with that person's pricing as much as if they said, we really want to we want people in the house. We don't want empty nights. So what your challenges are based on, and that's truly, it's unbelievable, the differences of all the owners that you deal with. So it's a challenge, and some people say, well, we just need to break it down where you can't manage over 50 properties a piece, but we're able to support a couple $1 million worth of payroll for people. Some live here, some live across in Aransas Pass, but that's how we do it. And I kind of wish sometimes I'd go back to the good old days when we had 50.
Yeah. Well,
So Nicole, you might be qualified to answer this. Do you see the Port Aransas Police becoming a cog in this wheel of enforcement?
I think it's necessary. I think it's necessary for them to be a part of it. I
A
think
part of it,
I
yeah.
think
What
starts
he
with property
suggested was
manager-
an
it starts with
owners
owners, it
association.
starts with property managers, it starts with code enforcement, it starts with police officers. I think everybody has to be, everybody needs to be a
Ideally, I
partner.
think the police would be your last line of defense, but what we just want is a
Yeah.
commitment from the police that when we call them, we're not gonna
Right.
get, well, sorry guys, we can't help you on this. Because we're trying to deal with the situation. We just need some assistance,
Yeah, and I like the thing of people pooling their money and actually hiring somebody.
I like the idea if the police force cannot keep up with it, especially in the busy times where you got 50,000 people here and there's 10 officers and they can't be at 20 parties at once.
Yeah.
I really like the idea of setting up a board or a committee of property management companies and individual
individuals.
owners
Yeah.
and pooling
Yeah,
money
there you go.
And
together
not
for
leaning on the
resources to
government.
assist with the.
Because if I don't know what the percentage is in Galveston, but if you think about it, that if it's 400 of them vested $400 or whatever it was a piece to put into this pool to hire this security, then that you just eliminated a large percentage or a decent percentage of the problems to a certain degree.
How do you make people buy into that?
They didn't have to. These
No,
were
I know.
all.
I'm saying, how do you incentivize people?
Oh,
to
I
buy
think
into
it's a sales job. It's definitely you go in and you show what the pros are, what
that? So
this
I
will
think
do.
also it's a.
And
I
it's,
know people get upset at the city because we hold the property managers liable, we hold
Yeah.
the property owners liable. But that almost creates their buy-in into that, like, hey,
yeah, no, it
avoid,
does.
avoid these, noise.
Now, a question for the police chief is, I don't know if the police department wants a private security force going around town trying to handle some of these things. They may prefer to do it themselves rather than causing that.
And it might be just my opinion. I tend to believe that a show of presence goes a long ways. I think
Where they don't have a lot of teeth, but they're just driving around with the light
The
flashing.
university
and people-
Does it?
They do it.
The university has a private guy that drives around every night, and I can tell you, sometimes when I drive down Beach Street and he's driving behind me, it makes me just,
Yeah.
pay attention a little bit.
No, it does. And I think that but I do think something like that, and it just takes forming a group, much like what they did because that shouldn't be on the city maybe to form that, because it's private and there's gonna be a lot of legalities involved in the city doing something
Right.
like that where they're not city employees or
Like
whatever.
May through September.
We're allowing that.
Yeah, I think
So-
the city's
Just-
influence there is, you could say, hey, property owners that don't do this tend to get more tickets for this situation. And you can buy into this for the cost of one ticket.
And it could be a conversation that needs to be had at the HOA level. Because,
Right.
if you go, like when I mentioned the guy that called me from Boyle Sands and Mustang Royale, what a perfect scenario. I mean, you're just down from Cinnamon Shores. I guarantee you Cinnamon Shores has a guy on a golf cart that he runs around and controls. I bet, I don't know what the city, how often police have to go out to Cinnamon Shores to solve problems, but I bet you they do a pretty good job of solving their own problems with their security.
I think
Just
they
by
recently
doing that.
started a 10 PM
Oh, yeah.
noise thing in Cinnamon Shore, and they said they've had pretty great success with
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
So that's proactivity by the people who have skin in the game.
Yep.
Well, maybe you guys, between now and the 26th, or we can have another meeting. Can y'all have each other's email? You have my email. And
Sorry.
anything.
He's
What
been
was
real
that?
quiet.
He has been.
Oh, he has.
He has a limit as well.
I was forgot he was there.
He said,
You know,
"This
I
meeting's
forgot about
over."
the parking thing. I was gonna say that now people are bringing not only their cars, they're towing a golf cart, or they're towing a trailer full of all their beach toys and bringing all this extra stuff with them. So that's a whole nother issue. But anyway, I think we touched base on anything.
I think we did pretty
Anything
good,
else? Anything
actually.
else?
We talked a little bit about reducing the number of cars in town by reducing the
Okay,
number of
Shelley, you're
people
the
in
only
that
one that
hotel.
hasn't got up here.
Well, I'm about to start making sounds like. I mean, we had, the last people we had in the house brought their two trucks, but they bought a big flatbed trailer with both their, with a golf cart or two on
We
it.
have an immense amount of.
We have a huge part, I mean,
Yeah,
but
you do.
But if
people,
you
with-
d-
have
if you-
people with only 2 parking spots, that means.
That's-
that was, yeah, I mean, the
And
truck
so
and
you
the trailer.
Yeah.
And then they want to come over to your parking lot and park.
But
And that's where the
they
communication comes.
They didn't say, oh, yeah, we have a regular old golf cart, and it
Building
was.
a house has been a big problem.
Yeah,
And if there was, if there's no on-street parking and you've got a small
there's
parking
not,
lot,
because we all did driveways.
they
I
can't.
got 40 feet of driveway.
They can't bring them.
I guess-
Do you have an extra one?
Excuse me?
Do you have an extra brochure?
I will print you, I'll send you one over.
Email it to me.
I'll email you to you.
You can make a copy of mine or something.
It's STO.
That's my cell phone number, so
Thank you.
if you think of anything, just let me
One,
know.
I had my phone on silent, but I still apologize. It's
I'm gonna call you Richard. I'm
We
gonna
didn't
call you
even hear it.
Richard. If I call you Richard, I'm sorry.
That's all right. I get called all kinds of bad
Me
names.
too.
I just want to say one more thing, please, about the common parking lot. The big common area, you can shove all these extra cars. That would be great. But anything that uses up more valuable land, or paves over more of our town and all that, it is a strike against that.
I think we
But
can.
still, they got to park somewhere.
Or they don't bring them. Or they put more people in a car instead of.
And you know,
Instead of
those,
four people coming in two cars, maybe four people come in one car.
Well, you know, when somebody pays $800,000 for a house, you know, they're gonna have an SUV, they're gonna have a big truck and several of them. You know, they're gonna have 6 or 8
That's
of
only a
those
2-bedroom
vehicles.
house.
Yeah, yeah.
you know how they stack boats? They got those carousels where you stack the boat.
I mean,
Do
would
that
you
with
deny
cars.
someone a license for not having parking? Because
Right
there's-
now, no, but that is this kind of.
But haven't
situation.
y'all been enforcing
Y'all have been
the
enforcing it?
concrete or, I don't know what y'all, off-street parking? You
So
ha-
we enforce that at the building construction level. So from
Okay.
2015 forward, every
Okay.
house that got built had to have the correct amount of parking.
Okay,
Before they get their C of O, they have to have the parking.
Which is
that
the
matches
same for short-term rental.
But it's only new construction houses. So if you had a house built from 1900
Yeah.
to 2015, you had whatever
And your
parking you had.
grandfather.
Houses from 2015 forward. Now, when we register short-term rentals, we do not look at their parking because we say it's a legally built house in Port Aransas.
Uh,
It was, but it is legally, it's legal, it's a legal house. So in our short-term rental ordinance, there's nothing about parking. If you're a legal house, you can rent. They're suggesting that we add some parking component into the
Yeah,
short-term rental.
if you had
If
to,
that was written into the ordinance, we would absolutely look at that at the registration. We would force them to do something.
yeah.
Right
you
now,
had-
we can't.
You had a site plan that showed your house and your property, you just draw on there, hey, I can fit 3 cars here, 2 cars here, 1 car here. So
And
I
right
can
now-
fit 6 cars, so I should be able to have enough people at my house.
And at new registration time, we're doing short-term rental inspections, so that's something that could be
Yeah,
verified.
because you've never done that.
Well, we have over the last year.
Well,
I guarantee you, the next time you get registered, you're gonna, an inspection's gonna
We're
get set
gonna
up.
be legal. Fire extinguisher
Yeah.
with everything.
Sticker.
Because like Carla does multiple,
sticker.
multiple of those every day.
okay, well, I guess that's it. Is that it? Is that good for y'all?
Yes, ma'am.
A lot of
I
good
think we've kind of
conversation.
went over.
Did we get
everything.
anything done? I think so.
Okay. Well, thank y'all for coming.
This was a brainstorming meeting,
Yes.
so.
So are we gonna meet again before the 26th?
Oh, I don't know.
It's up to y'all. I mean, I don't know if we can hash it much more.
I don't
mean,
know if we can either. We can, if we can just